Have you ever wondered why, when you go to change, it's really difficult? You come up against resistance, you come up against chaos, and you're trying to break an old pattern, install a new habit, and it just doesn't work for you. Well, the scientists have noticed this, and they have actually saw that everybody goes through a very similar process when they're trying to install a new habit. So much so, it's the same process for when organizations are trying to roll out a new process or a new system. It's human nature, really. And I wanted to take you through this little quick diagram by Virginia Satir, which really shows the whole process of why breaking patterns is really difficult and why quite often it's a nervous system upgrade that you need. Let me explain it to you. Here is the model. It's pretty straightforward. One side on the left here, where I'm kind of point, I can't really point, but I'll move myself here. Here is the Satir change model start. It's status quo, and then it goes to new status quo. And then in the middle, there's a bunch of junk that you've got to go through. So let's talk about that junk. So when you're at a status quo, your normal place where you are, and you're like, oh, I'm not comfortable here. You want to change. And then the first thing that happens to you is you have resistance to that change. Your old ego self is like, no. Your old nervous system is like, no, we don't want to change. We don't want to do things differently. We don't feel safe. We don't feel safe. And then you're like, no, but I do want to change. I don't care if you don't feel safe. I don't like where I am. And the more logical version of you takes over. And then you go and get into that change. But then you hit chaos right in the middle here. Chaos. This is when your nervous system starts to fry. You're like, oh, and then your nervous system will start looking around for patterns that will tell your mind and the rest of your body, oh, look, this new change isn't working. We should go back to the old way. This is really hard. I can't do this new process in the business. This new sales structure doesn't work. This new habit at the gym doesn't work. Let's just go back to our old way of eating ice cream and watching Netflix and beating ourselves up mentally. And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. So you fight back mentally with meditation, through journaling, through walking, through speaking to your coach, and you go through the mess of having those conversations, and you finally, through some somatic practices and meditation and breath work, you finally get through the chaos and you start to be able to become the more dominant voice in your head. And then that gets you to here, which is integration, where you start to feel like you're the new version of yourself more often, or when the old version starts to creep back in, that chaos seems to come back in. You are able to breathe through it, and you're more regularly able to become that new version until you get to the final part over here. Yes, that was new status quo. And then you're just normally that new version of yourself. And this process of old status quo to new status quo, where you'll first hit resistance, and then once you get past resistance, you'll hit chaos. And then once you get past chaos, you'll get into integration. And then finally, you'll get your new status quo. That is pattern breaking. That is it. That is the process you will go through. Whether you're launching a new process in your business and it's with your team, or whether it's through removing and changing a habit with yourself, toxic habit, whether it's with your health, wealth, or relationships, this is the process you will go through. Your nervous system will go through this process. You will go through this process. This is the process of change. And if you want to defeat all the negative patterns in your life and you want to get past them, you've got to expect to hit some type of resistance and chaos. And that's where having a coach, someone like me, or understanding somatic practices, or understanding meditation, no phone walks and renewal zones, and having a clear identity and understanding behavioral shifts is actually going to help you change. Because you've probably tried to change a million times in your life, but every time you change, it kind of doesn't work out, and you kind of end up being the same person and end up back into the same old routines. And that is because you didn't prepare for resistance or chaos. You just decided to jump into the new habit, and you weren't aware that your nervous system was going to pull you back like habit gravity, like a new habit taking off like a plane, and it's got no fuel. It's just going to and then crash. And that's what happens if you're not prepared for this, and if you don't understand the change model from status quo to new status quo. Anyway, that's a random little video today, about 4 minutes plus long, on this model and why it's super important for you to understand in life and business.